Hello, my name is Connor Waitley, and I am a professor of classics at the University of Winnipeg in Canada. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. Leonard has kindly allowed me to prepare a short 5-minute or so video on my paper and presentation, which stems from a book on violence. The title is Raiding in Roman Arabia During the Imperial Era. This stems from a large project on soldiers and civilians in roughly Roman Arabia from Trajan to Heraclius, and this project is funded by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, or SSHRC. Now, the location of the action in this paper is roughly a good chunk of northeastern Jordan, the Haran, sort of the Black Desert, characterized by these black stones, the vestiges of an ancient volcano. This is what had been part of the Nabatean kingdom, and then along with parts of southern Syria, and this is, as I say, modern Jordan, became the Roman province of Arabia up to a time, and then there were some name changes later. The principal body of evidence for my paper is this huge mass of Safavidic graffiti found in the Black Desert. And there you can see in this photo I took from last fall in the Northern Hemisphere, some of the stones on which this graffiti is carved. So far, and this number is a guesstimate and probably underestimates the total and is out of date. Anyway, about 50,000 graffiti have been found, using Safavidic, which is a script and not a people. The language itself is an ancient North Arabian, close to or related to Arabic. Most of the stuff is found east of the settled areas in the Haran, into the Hara, which is the desert part. A lot of it is hard to date, but most people date the body of evidence to the 1st century BCE through the 4th century CE, no later, because so far no Christian specific content has been found. The graffiti tends not to be monumental. This is more the kinds of things associated with the hopes and fears of your average person in this part of the world. Just to give you a hint of some of the content, I have a small selection. For instance, some does touch on known historical things, like here we have Persians waging war against the people of Rome, and there we have a struggle between the Romans and Nabateans. Here, another case where we have the name of individuals. Caesar's son died and Philippus had died. There is occasionally some other evidence that I bring into this discussion. The most notable is the work of a 6th century CE Arabic poet, Antada ibn Shaddad, who's from the Ma'ad tribe and is elite in, let's say, the northern half central-ish part of the Arabian Peninsula. He's been called a warrior poet and spokesman of war culture. I won't get into his wonderful stuff here. As I say, most of my evidence draws from the graffiti, but in the chapter itself, I talk a little bit about his work and how it features raiding. Okay, so I only have a minute and a half left, so let's talk about raiding. There's a picture of a Roman fort, Casa Burcu, off on a little water oasis. What we know is raiding is one of the most common types of warfare from the ancient world, or at least experienced by people sort of all across the Mediterranean and beyond. In this context, it often involves one nomadic group going up against another. We have some many dozens referred to in the graffiti, and the persons involved tend to be shepherds, camel breeders, sheep, goats, etc. I'll give you an example of what kinds of things we find in the graffiti in terms of raiding. Well, we get notes about people who raided, like he raided in the Ruba for 2 months, or I've been on a raid, or he grieved for his raiding party. Sometimes the graffiti even gets into where a raid took place. Like here it says, as I noted in the previous one, he raided in the Ruba and then returned during the rising of Gemini. Another one, he pastured the valley while raiding. And then another one, he raided the arable places in the plain, which may not mean much to us, but probably did to its initial audience. Sometimes the graffiti gets into the motivation of raids, why they did it in the first place. So here this one person went on a raid to bring the young she-camel. Another case, he was poor, and so he went on a raid, and returned on horseback. Another case, he spent the dry season in Hira, and then he drove off in a raid, the horses. Talking about climactic conditions. Sometimes people go on raid for booty, a common desire of soldiers in all contexts of warfare, I guess, as you all know. So we have some asking deities for help in raids and hoping that they grant booty and deliverance, etc. Some of the graffiti also get into the impact of this on individuals. Obviously, it's a lot of grief, trauma, etc., associated with the violence that comes out of this. So, one individual found the traces of his raiding party buried by members of a different family, and he grieved in pain. Another one, he grieved for his raiding party, and so on and so forth. There's a few examples of this. And yeah, I'm slightly over time, but as you can see, we have a reasonable number of examples of raiding in this part of the world taking place in the Hiraz or the Black Desert, but possibly beyond too. Most of that graffiti only deals with I was here type graffiti. There are some things with current events, but a lot of it deals with raiding. It expresses the emotions of those involved, their thinking, etc., motivations and how it impacts them, why they do it, and so on. The later evidence, like the warrior poet I mentioned earlier, helps get into how this impacted wider groups in the wider region. Thank you for listening. If you have questions from this very short presentation, feel free to email me. Thanks for your time.